Well, a warm welcome to this talk. Now, I used to teach a bit of psychology. It's not always useful. There is psychobabble, which can be unhelpful, but there are some aspects of psychology which are remarkably useful. And I want to do a bit of a mini-series that introduces some of the aspects of psychology that I've taught for decades and find really useful in explaining aspects of human behaviour, and also explaining quite a bit of the situation that we find ourselves in at the moment. Now, I want to start off with a fairly simple one. You've probably heard of it before. It's called the Johari Window. This is commonly used in workplace psychology, for example, but really quite interesting. And it takes a few minutes, so bear with me. So I've drawn one here. So this is a Johari window. So this is the window. Now, some things are known to self and known to others. This is described as our open self. So our skills, our attitudes, knowledge, things we do at work, things we do on the high street. We know we do them. Others know we do them. But then there's another aspect to us, another aspect of ourself, and this is the blind self. Let's look at what the blind self is and what that means now. So the blind self is known to others, but unknown to ourselves. So these are things that we don't know about, but others do know about. So I'm sure you can think of things like personal mannerisms and tics and bad habits and things that others are really obvious to others, but we can be completely oblivious to. More on that in a minute. Another aspect of self is the hidden self. Now, the hidden self is known to us. We know about our hidden self, but it's unknown to others. This is like the private self. And sometimes we have a bit of a facade to mask this. So this is to do with our thoughts, our feelings, our fears, our lusts, values, aspirations, insecurities, things that we know about, but we keep hidden from others. And then finally, we have this other section here, which is unknown to others and unknown to ourselves. This is the unknown self in this section here, this quarter here. Is there latent talents there? Is there repressed emotions? Is there subconscious beliefs? Is there potential capabilities? And as we'll see, are there potential capabilities there to do harm? Just how much evil am I capable of? Will depend on the circumstances I find myself in. Now, clearly our Johari window is not the same for everyone. So this might be my Johari window here at work. But at home, then clearly my wife's going to know me a bit better. So known to others, known to self. If the other is my wife or a family member, then this would be down here. The hidden self section would be much smaller. With people I don't know as well, the hidden section would be further up. Now, to an extent, we can choose where we put these red markers in a given situation. So, for example, if I want to reduce the size of my blind self, I can take feedback from others. I can make myself open to advice. I mean, after all, who wants to go through life getting on everyone's nerves and being really annoying and not realising that? You want a realistic view of how others view you, and that can help. This can help us do that. So if I take feedback and I'm open to advice, then I can increase the size of my open self and reduce the size of my blind self. I can move that line in that direction. My blind self is now smaller. My open self is now bigger. And this will increase transparency, allow for potentially more authentic relationships, maybe foster trust, collaboration, maybe make strong connections. You can see why this is so popular in work-based psychology, because it really affects the way that we are interacting with other people. So the blind self reduced by improved self-awareness. We have more self-awareness. We know about the things that we're doing that are annoying other people. As we say, seeking advice, open to advice, A willingness to learn, I think, is probably quite important here. And what can stop us reducing the size of our blind self? Maybe pride, maybe thinking we've got it all right already, denial. So we can see that humility is a major advantage to making ourselves more open and reducing the size of our blind self as we increase our self-awareness. Now, just in case you're wondering why it's called the Johari Window, it's because this was first developed by Joseph Lust and Harrington Ingham way back in 1955. So it's the Joseph and Harrington window, abbreviated to Johari. Now, there are aspects of me that are hidden, my hidden self. And if I want to hide less of myself, that means I have to disclose things about me to other people. So this is achieved through self-disclosure. So if we look at this diagram here again, if we move this line down here, so the open self is bigger and the hidden self gets smaller, this movement here is self-disclosure. We now have a much bigger area here. And you could call this honesty, I suppose, if you wanted to. And the idea is that this strengthens relationships because there's less of me that's hidden. And people, of course, know when you're hiding things. You work with people and you think, you know, I've worked with that person now for 6 months and I don't know them at all. Don't know if they're married, don't know if they're single, don't know if they live in a house, don't know if they live in a flat, don't know if they live in a caravan. I actually know nothing about them. It's quite possible if people don't self-disclose. And that can reduce the amount of trust, because to self-disclose is giving yourself a degree of vulnerability to other people, and that can often improve relationships when you decide it's appropriate. Of course, it's not always appropriate. So that line, moving that down, is self-disclosure. Let's hope that improves the emotional connections, as we've said. But what inhibits this? Well, fear of judgment, perhaps. If I reveal this about myself, people are going to judge me. I feel too vulnerable to do that. I'm going to keep myself all to myself, because if I expose myself, expose my thinking, my beliefs, I'm going to make myself vulnerable. And of course, this is very true in the modern work environment. We have to be very guarded about what we say. But other times it might be simple embarrassment. I'm embarrassed to reveal aspects of myself. And I think if we're honest, we all have aspects of ourselves that we are embarrassed about. So this leaves us with the last aspect of self here, the unknown self. Unknown to others and unknown to ourself. Aspects of ourself that are hidden. How can we reduce this? Well, self-reflection, new challenges, unexpected circumstances, keeping journals, seeking feedback. You see, this is actually quite hard, this one, isn't it? Because really a lot of this depends on the circumstances in which we find ourselves. Introspection and navel gazing can only get us so far. There's still going to be those aspects of ourself that are unknown to others and unknown to ourselves. And when we're in difficult circumstances, areas about ourselves become known to us and known to others. So I've been in difficult circumstances and been disappointed by new aspects of myself that I've learnt about. And I just want to give an example that I always read to my students. It's from this book here, Miracle on the River Kwai. It's by a captain called Ernest Gordon. And he was a prisoner of the Japanese in Thailand, building the infamous Death Railway. And it's just an example that I used to read to the students, because it really does show really how little we know about ourselves and how little others know about ourselves, because there's a big unknown self. So I'll read this bit here. The day's work had ended. The tools were being counted as usual. As the party was about to be dismissed, the Japanese guard shouted that a shovel was missing. He insisted that someone had stolen it to sell to the Thais. Striding up and down before the men, he ranted and denounced them for their wickedness and, most unforgivable of all, their ingratitude to the emperor. As he raved, he worked himself up into a paranoid fury. Screaming in broken English, he demanded that the guilty one step forward to take his punishment. No one moved. The guard's rage reached new heights of violence. "All die! All die!" he shrieked. To show that he meant what he said, he cocked his rifle, put it to his shoulder, looked down the sights, ready to fire at the first man at the end of the line. At that moment, the Argyll, member of the Argyll regiment, stepped forward, stood stiffly to attention and calmly said, "I did it." The guard unleashed all his whipped up hate. He kicked the helpless prisoner and beat him with his fists. Still the Argyll stood rigidly to attention, with blood streaming down his face. His silence goaded the guard into an excess of rage. Seizing his rifle by the barrel, he lifted it high over his head, and with a final blow brought it down on the skull of the Argyll, who sank limply to the ground and did not move again. Although it was perfectly clear that he was dead, the guard continued to beat him and only stopped when exhausted. The men of the work detail picked up their comrade's body, shouldered their tools, and marched back to the camp. When the tools were counted again at the guardhouse, no shovel was missing. Difficult to get through that passage. We don't know the name of the Argyll concerned, but a few years ago he was probably sitting in a pub in Stirling or Glasgow, and he probably had no idea at that time, as a young man, that he was capable of such extreme love that he would give his life for his friends. He'd probably no idea that he was capable of such nobility and self-sacrifice. Probably no idea at all. And it really is tragic that he had to find that out. But he did find that out. He found out he was capable of the most extreme sacrificial love for his friends, that he would die for them. And he found that out, and that became known to others. And for all too brief a moment, became known to himself as well. His unknown self had reduced in size. Other people, and I'm not going to give examples of this, but other people have found themselves in unusual situations and they've abused it. They've abused it. Perhaps to enrich themselves. Perhaps to attain self-sexual gratification. I'm sure we can think of situations where people have unexpectedly been put into positions of power and abused it. The question is, when we're in that difficult situation, we will be like the Argyll, demonstrating love and nobility, or will be like others, demonstrating cowardness, self-advancement and self-gratification. Hopefully most of us won't find out. So that's a Johari window, really quite useful. The four aspects of the self: open self, hidden self, blind self, unknown self, and how we can adjust the sizes of those compartments. More interesting psychology to come, but that was just a starter. I also want to do the Philip Zimbardo Stanford prison experiments, which are very interesting, Solomon Asch conformity experiments, and the terrifying Stanley Milgram electrocution experiments. But for now, thank you for watching.